Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather to explore a subject that transcends culture, time, and belief systems, the doctrine of man. This is not merely a philosophical pursuit, but a living inquiry into who we are, why we suffer, what we seek, and how we awaken to the truth within ourselves. At the heart of this doctrine lies one fundamental question: what does it mean to be human? We often think of ourselves as a mind and a body, thoughts, emotions, muscles, and memories. But the essence of being human goes far beyond the physical frame or the passing content of our minds. To truly understand this, we must look at the layers that form the human experience, the mechanisms that trap us, and the path that frees us. Let us begin with a simple but powerful truth: we are shaped by our habits. From the moment we wake until we fall asleep, we are living patterns of thought, of movement, of emotion. These patterns, once repeated long enough, become our identity. If you want to know who you are, take a close look at what you consistently do. Not what you intend, not what you believe, but what you repeat day after day. And so, the first teaching in this doctrine is awareness of repetition. What are you practicing? Is it worry? Is it anger? Or is it patience, presence, and strength? But awareness alone is not enough. There is a second principle we must embody. We are not our thoughts. This is one of the greatest illusions we carry, that every voice in our head is true, that every emotion is valid simply because we feel it. But the mind is a tool, not a master. It produces thoughts constantly, like clouds in the sky, and just because a thought appears does not mean it deserves your attention, your belief, or your energy. The power of being human is that we can choose which thoughts to engage with, choose which ones to release. The third truth in the doctrine of man is this: true growth begins with stillness. In our modern lives we are consumed by motion, constant stimulation, noise, productivity. But stillness is where transformation occurs. When we slow down, we meet ourselves. We uncover what we've been avoiding, our fears, our hopes, our pain, and our peace. This is not a weakness. It is a return to our source. Stillness allows us to see the inner conflicts we carry, the war between who we are and who we pretend to be. That brings us to the fourth principle: authenticity is power. Most of us live behind masks shaped by expectation and fear. But the human spirit cannot thrive in captivity. When we begin to speak and act from the core of who we are, not from fear, not from ego, but from clarity, we unlock a different kind of strength. It is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is rooted, calm, and unshakable. The fifth lesson is both simple and difficult. Discipline is freedom. Many associate discipline with restriction. But the truth is, the undisciplined life leads to slavery. Slavery to impulses, to mood swings, to distractions. When we lack discipline, we become victims of ourselves. But discipline, when rightly understood, is the foundation of mastery. It is the quiet agreement we make with ourselves to rise above chaos, to act with intention, to train the body and the mind to serve the spirit. And finally, the sixth and perhaps most vital understanding: everything you seek already exists within you. The peace, the joy, the purpose. It is not out there in the world. It is buried beneath the noise, beneath the doubt, waiting to be uncovered. The journey of being human is not about becoming something new, but remembering who we truly are. So, what is the doctrine of man? It is a reminder that our true nature is not anger, fear, or confusion. It is awareness, choice, discipline, and depth. It is the willingness to meet our pain without running. It is the courage to unlearn what no longer serves us. It is the commitment to live deliberately, not reactively. And above all, it is the quiet recognition that we are more than flesh and thought. We are the presence behind it all. Each of us must walk this path alone, but we can remind one another of the way. So, I leave you with this: don't chase the world. Know yourself. Train the body, still the mind, awaken the soul. Because when you do, the doctrine of man is no longer a teaching. It becomes your lived truth. From the moment we wake in the morning to the moment we lay our heads down at night, our lives unfold through patterns, small, repeated actions, thoughts, and reactions. Often, We speak about identity as if it were fixed, as if who we are is something we were born with or something that was decided long ago. But the truth is far simpler and at the same time far more powerful. We are what we repeatedly practice. If you want to know who you truly are, don't look at what you dream about or what you intend to become. Look at what you do over and over again. Look at the thoughts you nurture, the emotions you entertain, the actions you choose day after day. That is the essence of who you are. A person does not become patient simply by wishing to be patient. They become patient by practicing patience again and again in the small moments when it would be easier to snap, complain, or withdraw. A person does not become strong merely by admiring strength in others or thinking about being strong. Strength is built one repetition at a time through struggle, through discomfort, through discipline. Whatever qualities you wish to develop in yourself, calmness, courage, compassion, they are not granted by inspiration or luck. They are grown carefully and consciously by practice. What most people overlook is that we are always practicing something. Every thought we indulge, every word we speak, every reaction we repeat is shaping us. If you spend your days practicing worry, then worry will become your natural state. If you practice anger, it will not take long before anger defines you. If you give in to distraction, avoidance, or laziness regularly, those things will become your identity. On the other hand, if you begin to practice focus, to train your mind to return to the present, to respond instead of react, then over time those things become who you are. This concept is both a warning and a gift. It's a warning because it means we cannot escape the consequences of our small daily choices. No one becomes bitter, anxious, or aimless overnight. These are the results of unconscious practice, often repeated for years. But it is also a gift because it means we are not trapped. We are not stuck with the habits of yesterday. Change is always possible, not through grand gestures or sudden transformation, but through consistent, conscious repetition. A single drop of water does not shape stone, but repeated over time it carves valleys. When we understand that we are shaped by practice, the question becomes, what am I practicing right now, in this very moment? Through my posture, through my breath, through my attention, what am I becoming? We must become more aware of how we train ourselves, even unconsciously. Every time we complain, we are practicing dissatisfaction. Every time we blame others for our state of mind, we are practicing helplessness. But every time we take ownership, even in small ways, we are practicing power. Every time we pause, breathe, and choose a better response, we are practicing wisdom. We must also recognize that the body and the mind are not separate in this process. What we do physically affects us mentally, and what we think mentally affects our physical reality. The way you carry yourself, your posture, your breathing, your movement, affects your state of being. If you slouch and sigh every day, you are practicing defeat. If you walk with intention and presence, you are practicing confidence. And this is not a matter of pretending or faking something. It is about choosing to train both the mind and body to reflect what you truly value. There is no neutrality in practice. Time is always passing, and with it you are always becoming something. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment to begin changing. The perfect moment is right now. This is the moment where practice begins. This is the moment where identity is shaped. Ask yourself, what would it look like if I started practicing courage right now? What would it mean to practice discipline in this moment? Not next week, not tomorrow, but right here, while the temptation to quit is fresh. What would change if I committed to practicing presence each day, even in 5-minute doses? You may not see results immediately. You may feel like nothing is happening, but every repetition counts. Every choice to stay present when you want to drift off, every time you return to your breath instead of spiraling into thought, every moment you choose effort over excuse, it all adds up. Slowly, invisibly at first, you begin to change, and one day you'll notice, patience comes easier, you don't react as quickly, you stand taller, speak clearer, act with more certainty. not because you were suddenly gifted those traits, but because you practiced them. Who you are is not a finished product. It's a process, and that process is shaped by practice. Every moment you are practicing something. The question is not whether you're being shaped. It's what you're being shaped into. So ask yourself often, what am I rehearsing right now? And more importantly, is it making me into the person I truly want to become? We live most of our lives believing that every thought we think is ours, that everything that arises in our mind is a reflection of who we are. We take ownership of thoughts automatically, without question, without pause. If a thought appears, we assume it must mean something. If a judgment arises, we act on it. If a fear surfaces, we believe it. But what if that's not true? What if the thoughts that pass through your mind are not who you are, but simply mental events, like clouds drifting across the sky? Every day, thousands of thoughts pass through the human mind. Some are fleeting, harmless. Others are intense, troubling, even dangerous. Some thoughts are inspired and beautiful, others petty or cruel. But if we pause long enough to observe them rather than react to them, we begin to see something very important. Thoughts are not facts. They are not commands. They are not your identity. They are simply experiences, patterns of energy, fragments of memory, echoes of conditioning, reactions from the subconscious. And yet, most of us live under the tyranny of our own minds. One fearful thought is enough to paralyze us. One moment of self-doubt is enough to derail our progress. One old memory becomes a whole story we replay again and again, as if it defines us permanently. This is the trap, believing that if we think it, it must be real. But the truth is, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them. You are the awareness that notices what the mind is doing. Think of your thoughts like passengers on a train. Some stay for only one stop, others sit there for a long time. Some are loud, some are quiet. Some bring good news, others bring anxiety or sorrow. But none of them are the train itself. And none of them are the tracks. They are just visitors. You don't have to entertain every passenger that enters your cabin. You can choose to let them pass through without attachment. You can acknowledge them, but you do not have to act on them. This is your power. The ability to step back and observe your thoughts is one of the most liberating shifts you can experience as a human being. It creates space. It gives you room to breathe. Suddenly, you are no longer controlled by every worry, every judgment, every flash of emotion. You begin to realize that not everything that arises in your mind deserves your attention, your energy, or your belief. In that space of awareness, you gain clarity. You begin to choose what thoughts to feed and which ones to let fade away. This awareness is not about denial or repression. It's not pretending that negative or difficult thoughts don't exist. It's about seeing clearly without becoming entangled. You can say to yourself, a thought of fear is here. Instead of saying, I am afraid, you can notice, I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. Instead of becoming consumed by it, the shift is subtle but profound. It separates the thinker from the thought. It brings light into places that used to be dark with confusion. We often think that our value is determined by the quality of our thoughts. If we think happy thoughts, we are good. If we think dark or angry thoughts, we feel guilty or broken. But the mind is a tool. It responds to stimulus, to old conditioning, to experiences you may not even remember. It reacts, it loops. It creates stories to protect itself or explain the world. That doesn't make it evil, but it also doesn't make it accurate. You can observe the activity of the mind without becoming a victim to it. This ability to witness thoughts instead of identifying with them is like standing at the edge of a storm rather than being swept away by it. The storm may still rage, but you're no longer inside it. You're watching it from a place of calm. From there, you can choose your response. You can say, this thought does not serve me, and let it go. You can say, this fear is old and familiar, but it no longer controls me. Over time, with practice, the storm quiets. The mind becomes less reactive. The space between thought and action grows, and in that space, transformation begins. The real you, the observer, the aware presence, the one who watches but does not cling, starts to take the lead. You become less attached to passing moods, less ruled by old narratives, and more anchored in clarity. You start to notice the silence beneath the noise. You begin to experience a quiet strength that doesn't come from controlling every thought, but from knowing that you are not them. You begin to trust that no matter what the mind is doing, there is a deeper presence within you that is untouched and steady. It is in that space of inner observation that true freedom lies. Not freedom from thinking, but freedom from being ruled by thought. Not freedom from emotion, but freedom from becoming emotion. This is the beginning of peace, not because the world has changed or the mind has stopped, but because you no longer confuse the voice in your head with the essence of who you are. You are not your thoughts, you are the one who sees them. In a world that moves faster with every passing moment, stillness can feel unnatural, almost uncomfortable. We've grown so accustomed to motion, to noise, to stimulation, that silence feels like a void we need to fill. But that silence is not empty. It is full of everything we've been avoiding. It is in stillness, not in activity, not in constant doing, that we meet what is real inside us. Stillness is not just a pause between actions. It is a doorway to understanding, a mirror in which we begin to see ourselves clearly, perhaps for the first time. When the body stops moving and the mind quiets even slightly, things we've buried begin to rise. That is why stillness can feel difficult. It confronts us. It holds up a mirror to our patterns, our fears, our pain, and also to our truth. When we are always busy, distracted, or caught in the rush of tasks and obligations, we can temporarily avoid the deeper questions. Who am I really? What am I running from? What is asking to be healed or heard? These questions do not speak loudly. They whisper, and we only hear them in stillness. There is a kind of wisdom that lives beneath thought, beneath language, beneath explanation. It does not come from analyzing or arguing or trying to be right. It comes from being still long enough to listen. There's something deeper than the surface of the mind. It is easy to mistake movement for progress or noise for meaning. But stillness strips away illusion. In it, we discover that much of what we chase is a distraction. Much of what we fear is a story, and much of what we think is necessary is not. Stillness is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Just as the body needs rest to regenerate, the spirit needs silence to remember itself. Without stillness, we become reactive, constantly pulled by our emotions, our impulses, our environment. But with stillness, we create space between stimulus and response. We find a place within us that is not shaken by every thought or circumstance. That space is where clarity begins. That space is where power lives. You do not need to retreat to a mountaintop or monastery to find this stillness. It exists in every breath, every pause, every moment you choose to stop running and simply be present. It exists in the space between words, in the few seconds before you react, in the decision to listen instead of speak. Stillness is not always the absence of movement, but the presence of awareness. You can be still even while the world moves around you, even while you walk or work or speak, if you are rooted in presence. But the journey into stillness is not always peaceful at first. At the beginning, it often brings discomfort. The very act of sitting in silence may surface restlessness, boredom, or even anxiety. That's because we've trained ourselves to believe that discomfort must be avoided or fixed. But stillness asks something different. It asks us to stay to sit with what arises without immediately reaching for escape, and when we do, something shifts. We begin to see that the discomfort itself is not the enemy, it is the doorway. It is the messenger. The deeper we go into stillness, the more we begin to hear a quiet voice within us. Not the voice of ego or fear, but a more ancient voice. The one that knows. It speaks not in words, but in knowing. It guides without controlling. It reminds us of who we are beyond our roles, our image, our past. That voice is always there, but the noise of daily life drowns it out. Stillness allows it to surface. And when we begin to listen to it, we return to ourselves. Stillness is not about becoming passive or inactive. It is about becoming intentional. It is the grounding force beneath wise action. Without stillness, we rush into decisions, we act from fear, we speak from impulse. But when our actions arise from stillness, they carry a different weight. They are not reactions, they are responses. They come not from survival, but from alignment. This kind of action changes everything. It is rooted, clear, and often more effective than 1,000 frantic efforts. In stillness we also become more aware of others. We listen more fully, we speak more truthfully, we see beyond the surface of things. We become less reactive to people's behavior and more curious about what lies beneath it. We begin to sense what is real in a conversation, what is unspoken, what is needed. Stillness deepens not just our relationship with ourselves, but with the world around us. It increases empathy, insight, and connection, not by doing more, but by being more fully present. What we discover in stillness is that truth was never far away. It was simply buried beneath the layers of activity and thought. It was waiting for us to slow down long enough to notice it, and once we touch it, even briefly, it changes us. It reminds us that we are not lost, that we are not broken, that everything we need is already here within. Stillness doesn't give us something new. It reveals what has been here all along. To sit in stillness is to say, I am ready to see. I am ready to hear. I am ready to meet myself. Not the image, not the mask, but the presence behind it all. And in that meeting there is peace, not because everything is perfect, but because we have stopped running. There is a quiet pressure that moves through society, often unnoticed but deeply felt. The pressure to be something other than what you truly are. From a young age, we learn to adapt, to edit ourselves, to fit the mold that others expect from us. We wear masks to be accepted, to avoid rejection, to feel safe. We learn how to act in different rooms, how to hide our fears, how to speak what is palatable instead of what is true. And yet, even when surrounded by people, even when praised or approved of, there can remain an emptiness inside. A subtle ache that whispers, this is not who I really am. We are taught to measure strength by how much we can control, how tough we appear, how well we can hide our pain or outperform others. But real strength is not performance. Real strength is the courage to be real in a world that constantly urges you to be something else. To stand in your truth, especially when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or misunderstood, is not weakness. It is power. It takes far more courage to be authentic than it does to fit in. Authenticity is not about being perfect or unchanging. It's not about announcing every thought you have or rejecting every influence. It is about alignment. It is the quiet but unwavering decision to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. It's asking yourself, not what do they want me to be, but what feels true to me. What values do I live by even when no one is watching? What kind of person am I when I stop trying to impress or protect myself? So many people feel exhausted not because of what they do, but because of who they pretend to be. Carrying the weight of an image of performance, of constant self-editing. It is draining. It creates internal conflict because the outer life begins to drift away from the inner truth. And the farther the gap becomes, the more we feel disconnected, anxious, hollow. Authenticity closes that gap. It brings your outer actions in line with your inner world, and in that alignment you find peace. But authenticity is not always easy. Sometimes it means standing alone. Sometimes it means disappointing others, or walking away from situations that no longer match who you've become. Sometimes it means saying no when yes would be easier, or speaking up when silence would be safer. But the cost of betraying yourself is always higher than the cost of discomfort. Every time you abandon your truth to make someone else comfortable, you shrink a little inside. You teach yourself that your voice doesn't matter, that your feelings are negotiable. But they are not. Your truth matters, your voice is needed, your realness is your gift. We live in a culture where image is everything, where people post curated versions of themselves, where appearances often matter more than depth. But authenticity is a quiet rebellion against all that noise. It says, I will not measure my worth by likes, applause, or conformity. I will measure it by how deeply I know myself, how courageously I live my truth, and how consistently I act from that place of knowing. In doing so, you give others permission to do the same. Your authenticity becomes a mirror that reflects possibility. It reminds others that they too can stop pretending, stop performing, and come home to who they really are. There is also great healing in authenticity. When you allow yourself to be seen, truly seen, you begin to break the illusion that you must be perfect to be loved. You begin to trust that you are enough, not because of what you achieve or how well you hide your flaws, but simply because you exist. And that shift is life-changing. When you no longer need to be someone else to belong, you find true belonging with others and with yourself. Authenticity does not mean you never evolve. In fact, it demands evolution. It requires honesty with yourself about where you've been, what you've learned, and how you've changed. It invites you to shed old identities that no longer serve you, and to step into new versions of yourself that feel more aligned. To live authentically is to live in motion, not chasing approval, but following inner truth wherever it leads, even when the path is unclear. There is nothing more grounding than knowing that the life you're living is yours, not borrowed, not performed, not copied. When you speak, your words carry weight because they come from a place of integrity. When you act, your actions resonate because they are backed by conviction. And even when you falter, you do so honestly, without pretending, without hiding. This kind of life may not always be easy, but it is whole. It is free. To be authentic is to walk through the world without armor, not because you're unafraid, but because you trust that who you are at your core is enough. You don't need to embellish, to compete, to impress. You only need to be honest with yourself and with the world. That is the essence of real power. It is not loud, it is not polished, it is rooted, and it never asks for permission. Nothing in nature stays the same. The rivers never flow in the same pattern. The sky never looks identical 2 days in a row. Your body renews its cells, your breath rises and falls, your emotions shift like the wind. Change is not a disruption, it is the design, it is the natural rhythm of life, and yet we spend so much of our lives resisting it. We hold on to what's familiar, what's comfortable, what we've grown used to, even if it no longer serves us. We treat change as an enemy, when in truth it is the greatest teacher. Most of our suffering doesn't come from change itself, but from our refusal to accept it. We mourn the loss of what was. We fear what might come. We cling to ideas, identities, and expectations because they make us feel secure, even if they're outdated. But the deeper truth is this: life has never stopped moving. It will not pause just because we are scared. The seasons shift, people grow, circumstances evolve. You are not the same person you were last year, last month, or even yesterday, and that is not a problem. It is a gift. Change invites growth. It clears out the old so something new can emerge. The falling leaves of autumn are not a death, but a preparation for renewal. The crumbling of what we thought was stable is often the beginning of something more honest. When we learn to see change not as a threat, but as a current to move with, everything softens. We begin to breathe more deeply. We begin to trust the unfolding, even if we don't understand it. Flowing with change doesn't mean you stop caring or become passive. It means you stop resisting the inevitable. You stop trying to control everything and instead begin to move in harmony with life's rhythm. You listen, you adapt, you learn. Like water flowing around rocks, you stay true to your nature but flexible in your form. You don't need to force the world to match your plan. You learn to dance with it instead. There is profound strength in flexibility. We tend to think of strength as something solid, unmovable, rigid, but the tree that stands stiff and refuses to bend in a storm is the one that breaks. The tree that sways, that yields to the wind while remaining rooted, is the one that survives. You too can be like that. Rooted in your values, but responsive to change. Grounded in your truth, but willing to let go of what no longer aligns. One of the greatest challenges of change is letting go, not just of people or places, but of the versions of ourselves we've outgrown. Sometimes it's hard to admit that what once fulfilled us no longer does. that the identity we wore proudly no longer fits, that the dream we chased has changed shape. But letting go is not failure, it's wisdom. It's the awareness that clinging to the past only makes the present harder. When you release the old, you create space for something truer to arrive. The mind will often try to trick you into believing that certainty equals safety. That if you can just keep everything the same, you'll be okay, but that illusion is fragile. Life does not promise predictability. It promises presence. It asks you to meet each moment as it is, not as you wish it to be. When you resist change, you miss the beauty of what's actually happening. But when you open to it, even the uncomfortable becomes sacred. Even endings carry seeds of new beginnings. Flowing with change is also about trust. Trusting that even if you cannot see the whole path, you can take the next step. Trusting that you will learn what you need to learn, that nothing is wasted, that even the detours hold value. It means believing not that everything will go according to plan, but that you will be okay even when it doesn't. Trust is not blind optimism. It is the quiet confidence that you are capable, that life is wise, that growth comes in many forms. And in that trust, something shifts inside you. You stop bracing for the worst. You start relaxing into the unknown. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? You stop wishing life were different and start engaging with it as it is. That is the essence of flowing. You are not a rock resisting the river. You are the current itself, moving, learning, transforming. Change is the only constant, and the more we practice meeting it with openness, the more resilient we become. We stop being thrown off by every unexpected twist. We stop feeling like victims of fate. Instead, we become partners with life. We begin to see change as a collaborator, not a threat. Something to listen to. Something to honor. Something that shapes us into wiser, more compassionate, more present human beings. This flow is not about giving up. It's about giving into life, to growth, to the deeper intelligence that moves through all things. When you stop fighting change, you start walking in rhythm with your own becoming. You realize that you're not losing yourself. You're discovering who you've been all along. There is a vast difference between knowing and understanding, between collecting information and embodying truth. In today's world, we are surrounded by knowledge. Books, lectures, videos, teachings, quotes. We are flooded with ideas. It is possible now to speak eloquently about subjects we've never lived through, to debate philosophies we don't actually practice, to teach lessons we haven't yet integrated. And yet, when we face difficulty, confusion, loss, or transformation, what we remember is not what we've read, it's what we've lived. That is the foundation of real wisdom. True wisdom is not something we acquire like a possession. It's something we become. It's carved into us by experience. It's shaped through time, tested through difficulty, refined through silence, and made strong through presence. It's not about being clever, or having all the answers, or speaking in perfect lines. Wisdom often doesn't speak at all. It watches, it listens, it waits for the right moment to act. And when it does, it moves with clarity, simplicity, and weight. There are many who know what love is supposed to be, but cannot show up with vulnerability. Many who understand discipline intellectually, but cannot hold themselves accountable. Many who repeat the words acceptance, presence, or truth, but still live in resistance to the life they're in. This isn't judgment, it's simply reflection, because we all do this. We all at some point carry knowledge in our minds that has not yet touched our hearts. We quote what we wish we embodied, but that gap is also an invitation, not to feel ashamed, but to begin the deeper work of becoming. Wisdom is not about appearing enlightened. It is about walking honestly through your own shadows, facing the parts of yourself you once denied, sitting in the discomfort of growth without rushing to fix it or flee. Wisdom grows quietly, often when no one is watching. It grows when you fail and choose to learn instead of hide. It grows when you're misunderstood and stay soft, when you're challenged and respond with patience. When you're afraid but still move forward with grace. It's not about grand gestures or spiritual performances. It's about how you carry yourself in the small, ordinary moments, Do you listen, really listen, when someone speaks? Do you pause before reacting? Do you tell the truth even when it costs you something? Do you return to your breath when everything feels uncertain? These are the places where wisdom lives. Not in what you say, but in what you choose. Not in the idea of who you are, but in the way you show up when no one is there to applaud you. Sometimes wisdom looks like knowing when to speak. Other times it's knowing when to stay silent. Sometimes it's found in stillness, and other times in courageous action. It doesn't follow one formula or wear one face, but one thing is always true: wisdom is rooted in presence. You cannot be wise if you are not here. You cannot access deeper truth if your mind is always running ahead or stuck in the past. The body knows what the mind forgets, that this moment is where life is happening. This is where the lessons are. This is where your feet meet the earth. There are seasons in life where we learn through study, through words, through listening to others. And that is sacred, but then comes the invitation to live it, to take those teachings off the page and bring them into your relationships, your work, your body, your habits, your speech, to make the abstract real. That's where wisdom is born, not in memorizing the path, but in walking it. And walking it means falling sometimes. It means changing your mind when new understanding arrives. It means admitting when you've been wrong. It means being teachable, not just in youth, but always. The wise are not those who know the most. They are those who stay open to growth, open to feedback, open to the mystery that still remains no matter how much you've learned. They carry humility like a quiet lamp in the dark. They don't seek to impress. They seek to be in alignment with what is real. Real wisdom also softens judgment. When you've lived enough, you understand that people are doing the best they can with the awareness they have. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop pretending to know what's best for everyone else. Instead, you begin to understand the deeper threads that connect us, the shared fears, the universal longings, the moments of uncertainty that we all carry. You become kinder, not because you're weak, but because you've seen how hard life can be, and you've seen how much more healing happens when you meet others with compassion rather than critique. Eventually, wisdom becomes not something you talk about, but something others feel in your presence. Not because you claim it, but because you live it. It moves in how you sit, how you speak, how you breathe. There is a steadiness to it, a rootedness, a quiet confidence that doesn't come from having all the answers, but from having been through enough to know that even the unanswered can be held with grace. The journey is not to become someone who knows everything, but someone who lives deeply what they do know. Someone who takes the teachings and lets them shape the way they move through the world. That is the mark of wisdom, not brilliance, not eloquence, but integrity, alignment, a kind of truth that lives in your bones. So as we stand at the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern living, one truth becomes undeniably clear. The journey of being human is not about perfection, but about depth. It is not about appearing strong, but about becoming real. To know ourselves, we must train ourselves. To grow, we must let go. To move forward, we must stop clinging to what no longer serves. And to truly live, we must open ourselves fully to change, to truth, to the rhythm of life itself. We are not here merely to perform roles or repeat knowledge. We are here to embody truth, to walk our path with courage, clarity, and authenticity. Our discipline gives us direction, our struggles give us shape, and our choices define who we become. Real strength is found in honest self-awareness. Real peace is found in flowing with life, not fighting against it. And real wisdom is not what we say. It is how we live, moment by moment, breath by breath. The doctrine of man is not a rigid doctrine at all. It is a living, evolving reflection of our inner world. And if we are willing to slow down, to look within, and to walk this path with integrity, then we discover something unshakable, not in the world around us, but in the stillness of our being. That is where the real journey begins. Thank you.